What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Echoes of Elsewhere, the podcast where we dive into everything abandoned and urbex. I'm your host, Courtney Autumn, and today I am running things solo, so we are going to be diving into something a little bit different. Urban explorers tend to live in a strange liminal space, not quite mainstream, not quite rebellious, part historian, part photographer, part poet, part detective. And because what we do isn't widely understood, people fill the gaps with assumptions. Sometimes those assumptions are funny, sometimes they're dramatic, sometimes they're a little insulting, and sometimes, honestly, they're kind of magical. But today, we're breaking them all down. I'm going to be diving into the most common myths about urban explorers and why they are wrong. So grab your flashlight and let's get into it. Before we unravel the myths one by one, we need to understand why they exist in the first place. Urban exploration is quiet, hidden, secretive, unregulated, and deeply personal. We don't hand out pamphlets saying, "Welcome to Urbex. Here's all the information you need." So naturally, people imagine. They fill in the blanks with movies, rumor, the occasional viral post that they see, their own fear, or their own fascination. Abandoned places feel like the perfect backdrop for mystery, so myths grow naturally, almost organically. But here's the truth. Most of these myths say a lot more about the outsider's imaginations than they do about explorers themselves. So I'm going to take a minute, or a few, or this entire episode to clear the fog a little bit. Let's start with the first and probably the most common myth, which is the one that follows us all like a shadow, and that is that urban explorers are criminals. People hear abandoned building and automatically think illegal, destructive, dangerous, and shady, but real explorers usually carry respect, curiosity, caution, a camera, and maybe a granola bar, like I do. Probably some water. But we're not here to cover the essentials, so moving along. We're not criminals, we're caretakers of forgotten places and forgotten stories. The real criminals are copper thieves, vandals, people breaking in with malicious intent. Urban explorers often document the damage that those people leave behind. We're the ones trying to preserve, not destroy. I can't stress that enough. I say it all the time on this podcast, but it's so true. We enter a place like entering a memory, carefully, with an open mind and quiet steps. We're not here to loot, we're here to learn. There's a big, big difference. Which leads me right into my next myth. Explorers destroy locations. I'm just going to pause for the cause because, you guys, I understand that this one comes from the misunderstanding of what decay really looks like. People see collapsed roofs, waterlogged hallways, vandalism, smashed glass, graffiti, and assume that explorers did it. But true explorers have a rule that's older than TikTok. And that is to take nothing, break nothing, and leave no trace. Real urbex culture is about reverence. If anything, we're usually the ones fighting against overexposure and discouraging vandalism and discouraging sharing coordinates and documenting the location often before it's gone anyways. We don't destroy, we witness. Moving on to the next myth, which is going to be an interesting one to unpack because I think that we all have a different opinion about how to do this properly, and we all probably have done something that we regret as far as sharing a location is concerned. But the next myth that I want to cover is that urban explorers reveal every location. Like I said, this one we need a moment for, because obviously I cannot speak for everyone in this community, but we should be more secretive. And I think the ones that are trying to do this tactfully and respectfully are doing that. And those of us are usually the ones that crop out signs, we blur out addresses, we're allergic to geotags, we'll call something the blue hallway place before giving coordinates or giving it an obvious name. Every spot I explore, I give it my own name based on either something I found there or the experience I had or what it looks like or whatever. Never anything to do with the location or anyone who's lived in it. I thought twice about even putting this in here because there's so much chatter in the urbex community, especially right now, about certain people not being secretive. And touche, I get it. A lot of people out there are guilty for it. I will say this. If a place is very easily Googled, if a place has been explored by 1,000 people, 100 people, even a dozen people, and one of them has made it obvious, or if a place has a lot of historic value, it's not going to take anything but a Google search to figure out where it is anyway. So I'm not talking about those places. I'm not talking about a hospital. I'm not talking about a school. I'm not talking about a factory. I'm primarily talking about houses, obviously. And I think for a lot of reasons, but primarily because if we find a good time cap, that usually means there's a lot of stuff in it. It's literally frozen in time, as if whoever lived there just left yesterday. So having said that, some of these houses have a lot of stuff in them. Imagine if you just walked out of your own house today and every single thing was left in place and you never returned, and 8 years later, there's people going through your house. We respect the houses, real explorers, I should say, the ones of us who take this seriously and want to do our best to be respectful for the property and for the community. We do our absolute best to document them and be able to share them in a way that doesn't expose the property. Now, I'm not saying that someone who has all the time and resources in the world still can't figure it out, even if I've gone and blurred out every name, picture, whatever in the background. There's someone out there who, if they've made it their mission to find something I've posted, whether I've been the most discreet I can be or not, they can likely find it. The internet is a powerful tool. But having said that, when we're exploring houses especially, and there are a lot of valuable items inside, or a lot of sensitive information, names, addresses, whatever, we have to absolutely be more careful about what we're posting and who can see it. And I don't know if I've brought this up on here already or not. I think I have. But one thing I cannot stress enough is that there are people outside of the urbex community that are looking at our content intentionally to try and find these places, not for exploring, for literally the exact reasons that we end up having a bad reputation, because we explore these places, but we're not usually the common denominator of the destruction behind them. So you have to remember that everyone's on the internet. It's not just this community that's looking at our content. There's people that are looking at our content to try and bait places to go steal from, to go vandalize, whatever the case. So for that reason, we have to be more discreet. It's not just about ego, and it's not just about gatekeeping or whatever. And for those of you who think that you're going to get more clicks or more views or more engagement by naming a place or making it obvious, you're ruining the place for the whole entire community. You're running the risk that that place is going to immediately get destroyed because, again, you don't know whose hands that information is going into. So like I said, once a location is public, it becomes vandalized, looted, unsafe, and ruined for literally everyone. So gatekeeping isn't a wall. It's a protective fence. We don't hide locations out of ego. We hide them out of love. And for that reason, I don't think that urbexers reveal every location, but I do think that some of us can do a better job at being discreet. So I'll leave it at that. The next myth is that urbexers are thrill-seeking daredevils, which I think can ring partly true for some of us, but I think that people imagine us as rooftop runners and tunnel crawlers and death wish adrenaline addicts and wannabe stunt performers, but most real explorers are very cautious and analytical and slow-moving and observant and borderline paranoid. So I will say that. Generally speaking, I try to be calm. And exploring does calm me in a sense. So I'm very rarely paranoid. And if I am, I'm just not going to explore that place because I trust my instincts. But I have been exploring with people that I don't even know how they do urbex because they're so paranoid about everything. If you're listening and you know who you are that I'm referring to, I love you and I'm sorry, but it is true. But yeah, so with all of that said, we explorers generally are very, very careful. We test floors before we step onto them. We avoid stairs that even look wrong, sound wrong, whatever. We whisper more than we talk. We carry first aid and, like I said, all the gear. So the thrill doesn't come from danger. It comes from discovery. So as much as it is true that it is thrill-seeking, I don't think the thrill is rooted in this extreme way that people on the outside view it as. We're not here to attempt fate. We're here to honor history, not become a part of it. So yeah, the next myth is that urbexers do paranormal stuff. And shout out to Chris, aka at Bloodrow Kushner, for mentioning this one to me because I almost forgot about this one. And this one is so true. I hear it all the time and I get asked all the time if I do paranormal investigating. And it's weird that I never really imagined that as like a crossover world that people view this as. But yeah, while some explorers absolutely lean into the spooky vibes, shout out to Rose Urbex, most of us are not there to summon spirits. Some of us are, some of us aren't. For those of us who are not, I think that we're there for the opposite almost. The stillness, the atmosphere, the mystery, the nostalgia. Do weird things happen? Yeah, sometimes, for sure. But I think that we try to interpret those noises through other things, like air pressure and animals or squatters, aging ceilings, crumbling walls, shifting temperature. Usually our first instinct is not to assume it's a ghost. So while a lot of us do believe in the paranormal, I do, and we respect it, most of us are not chasing it. So yeah, moving on to the next myth, which is that urbexers are just in it for content. And again, this is another tricky one to unpack because I do think that some people who call themselves urbexers are, in fact, just in it for the content. And I think it's going to be easy to figure out who those are because those are usually the ones that fall off the hobby the fastest. And yeah, it's harder to maintain than it seems. Even I sometimes question if I should keep doing this or not. And not because it's not fun and not because I don't love it. Almost because I'm making content now, that almost starts taking the joy out of it a little bit. Not the joy, but it makes it feel like you have an obligation attached to it, and I don't like that. But my point is that I do think some people have started urbex to do content, and they weren't organically pulled to explore abandoned places and have the relationship with it that most of us do, that love it and are passionate about it and make content as a secondary thing. So I do think social media made urbex visible, which I will forever be grateful for. And again, invisibility can come assumption. So I think that's where this myth comes from, and people think that explorers care only about likes and going viral and shock value and dramatic videos. And like I said, there are those out there that that's true for. But For me personally, and for a lot of the explorers that I have on this podcast, and a lot of the people that I explore with and consider friends in this community, some of them don't post anything at all. Some of them have a lot of locations and spots in their archive, and they don't bother to post all that stuff because they're not in it for the engagement or for the content. Some of them don't even bring cameras sometimes, some of them have been doing this before social media was relevant. I have. I used to go into abandoned buildings with nothing. A flashlight. Sometimes not even that. I miss those days sometimes, just to go in there so free of gear and just not have anything in my hands. So yeah, that rings so true for me. Whether social media existed, whether this was a niche thing that people are interested in globally, basically whether social media existed or cameras existed or documenting or urbex in general as a community, as a niche, as a hobby, I would be doing it regardless. And I always have. I've been doing this since I was a kid. And like I said, I think that most true explorers, real explorers, people who do this with respect, I think that rings true for probably most of us. We would be doing this with or without a camera, with or without content. And I think it's safe to say that the content is almost like a souvenir. It's not the priority. It's not primary. It's a souvenir. It's not the purpose. We explore because we love forgotten beauty. We crave quiet, and we treasure history. We feel connected to decay, and these places awaken something in us. So if social media died tomorrow, urbex would continue. Probably stronger for some of us. Who knows? The next myth is that urban explorers are all the same type of person. I think this is another one of the biggest misconceptions, that explorers are all cut from the same cloth. Young dudes, dark hoodies, backpack, maybe a GoPro strapped to something. That's the stereotype. But the community is wildly diverse. Unbelievably diverse. There's all kinds of people who do urbex. There's photographers, moms, artists, history nerds, TikTok creators, architects, college kids, teachers, poets, construction workers, writers, adrenaline junkies. I mean, there's people who hate adrenaline who do urbex. There's introverts, extroverts, people who love quiet emptiness. I don't know. Everyone finds their own doorway into the hobby. And oh my God. And you guys know I'm going to take a moment to talk about the ladies in this community, because the stereotype that this is such a male-dominated niche or a male-dominated community is untrue. It's so untrue. While there are a lot of guys in urbex, as you guys know, a lot of dudes have been on my podcast, and I love every single one of them. And I love all of you listening. Nothing against you guys. But I'm gonna take a moment to just say that women are absolutely dominating some of the riskiest, most unexplored places in the scene. So yeah, I mean, there's women who climb to the top floors no one else touches, crawl through tunnels that seasoned explorers won't attempt, and research locations with surgical precision, you guys. That's what women are so good for. We generally rescue abandoned animals on site. I'm not saying dudes don't. I know you guys do. I know there's some sweet dudes out there. Again, shout out to John Berkey, because I swear he's always tending to some stray animal in a bando. Anyway, women are just amazing. There's several ladies in this community that I absolutely admire, and they inspire me to do what I do. They inspire me to keep exploring and taking better pictures. And I don't know, some of you guys inspire me to take some not appropriate photos in a bando. That much I will say. Just kidding. Anyway, my point is that there are many women that are pioneering spaces that many longtime explorers will admit they wouldn't dare enter. So this is not a male-dominated community. needless to say, I think that there are women in this community that are redefining what an explorer looks like, and not with force, but with courage and instinct and intuition. And I think all of that creates such a beautifully diverse community. And that's part of what I love about it. I think it's very appropriately diverse. And the myth that urbex has a type is bullshit. This community is like a mosaic. It's not a stereotype. So I'll just put it that way. And last but not least, the final myth is that urbex is just trespassing in cool or spooky or abandoned buildings. And yeah, it's a funny myth because it's very oversimplified, but deeply untrue. And that's because I think that people's outlook on what we do is just hopping a fence and walking around, taking photos and leaving, or vandalizing somewhere in between all of that. But urbex is so much deeper and so much more emotional and so much more intentional. Urbex is, it's history without the textbooks. It's storytelling without permission. It's art without the gallery. It's therapy without the therapist. And yeah, I mean, it's like time travel without the machine, really. And we aren't just entering spaces, we're entering stories. Every room and place is a memory. Every peeling wall is a sentence. Every object left behind is a whisper from someone who lived a whole life before we ever arrived in a space. So urbex is trespassing in the legal sense sometimes, but in the spiritual sense, it's visitation, and it's witnessing, it's listening, it's respecting, it's exploring. It's stepping into a place that time has paused and kind of becoming part of its last chapter, temporarily anyway. Urban exploration is not about breaking into buildings. It's about breaking into history and mystery and memories. So, why do these myths even matter? And the reason why is because myths create misconceptions that ripple into safety, legality, public perception, access, community culture. And the more truth that is told, the more respected and safer urban exploration becomes. Because at its heart, urbex isn't about crime or danger or rebellion. It's about connection to the past, to forgotten stories, to the quiet that only abandoned places can hold. So, if you've ever felt judged or misunderstood or boxed into a stereotype because you explore the forgotten or the abandoned, then let this episode be your reset. Urban explorers aren't criminals, vandals, thrill chasers, or one-dimensional characters. We're storytellers, observers, preservationists, artists, wanderers, listeners, and protectors. And we all explore for our own reasons. So, yeah, if this episode resonated with you, share it with an explorer who needs a little validation, because I know we all do. Or send it to someone who's always wondered why you do what you do, because I don't think everyone gets the depth of urbex like we do. And that's why I come here to interview people and really try to shed light on who the explorers themselves are, in addition to their crazy ass stories. But I am trying to create a space so people have more awareness and a connection to what we do. And so not everyone thinks that we're out here creating chaos and destruction everywhere we go, because that's so far from the truth. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I appreciate you guys coming back to listen to another episode of Echoes of Elsewhere. I will be back in 2 weeks with a very special guest. So be sure you're subscribed to the podcast and leave a review, please, if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate it. As always, all of my information, social media, my website, anything else, ways to contact me, will all be linked in the description as always. Until next time, keep exploring the allure and the abandoned, the beauty of decay, and the echoes of elsewhere.